Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about the Hollywood shutdown. And I specifically want to talk about what are the lessons that we take away from it as dungeon masters, and what does it mean in light of the structures that Gary Gygax laid down with Dungeons and Dragons, right? So let's dive into this. So specifically what I want to talk about today is just what is happening with the Hollywood shutdown and what does it illuminate about our actual IRL lives that looks a lot like the structure that Gary Gygax established for Dungeons and Dragons. And then once we understand the IRL structure, what does that mean when we're in the middle of playing Dungeons and Dragons? What lessons do we take away from our campaign sessions, right? So let's dig into this. Okay, so first of all, Gary set down in Dungeons and Dragons this really critical aspect, which is player character and non-player character. I do think we need to update that language, and so I am updating that language in my campaigns. Character is a player character. Entity is a non-player character. When I say entity in this video, I mean non-player character, right? But I will bounce between the two because I really think we should shift the language from player character, non-player character to character, which is a player character, and an entity, which is a non-player character. So first of all, when Gary Gygax introduced the non-player character term, it didn't have the meaning it has now. It actually has a very loaded meaning today, which is a little bit sad. So, and what is that loaded meaning? Well, we've reached the point where, like, for a while on Twitter, you couldn't use the word NPC. Because what it meant was a person that doesn't, on Twitter when they were using it to mean a person that doesn't matter, right? And that is very frightening. Like, you don't want to be in a situation like that. You don't want to be in a situation where you feel like you don't matter. No one wants that, right? And we don't want to be in a position where we're looking at the world and saying these people don't matter, right? On the flip side, so first of all, from a holistic perspective, we should never divide the world, the IRL world, into non-player characters and player characters, right? But when we're playing Dungeons and Dragons, there's this harsh reality that is when we're reminded of it directly when we play Dungeons and Dragons. But additionally, the IRL has recently run into a situation where it's very clear that some people are more critical than others in the accomplishment of key value assets, which are movies and television shows. So let's talk about the Hollywood shutdown and what this means overall. Okay, and then we're going to talk about it from the perspective of characters and entities, right? So first of all, the Writers Guild in America went on strike. It really wasn't that big a deal. It made a few news stories here and there. The writers themselves understood that this was like last thing on the Americans list that people cared about, and it really didn't move the needle for anybody. And it really wasn't a big deal, right? And Hollywood had not shut down. They were still they're like, we got scripts for days. It's not a problem. We're fine. We got scripts banked. We can keep shooting, right? But then the Screen Actors Guild decided to go on strike, and that's where the celebrities come in, and the actors went on strike. That's a Hollywood shutdown, like, period, end of sentence, right? And actually, I think that would have been a Hollywood shutdown without the Writers Guild, right? Because the reason why is, well, I guess the writers could have been creating scripts while the actors were not acting, so that would not have been a Hollywood shutdown. But at this point, legit, you're looking at a Hollywood shutdown, right? So I listened to Grace Randolph, and she immediately went on and did a very in-depth live show where she talked in depth and answered questions on this and said, let's dig into this. Let's see where we're at, right? And and so somebody said, hey, what's going on with the people who with wardrobe managers, and with makeup artists, and with grips and with light technicians, what happens to them? And she said flat out, yeah, so none of them are fired, but none of them are going to get paid a dime. And the reason why is they can't go to work because the work isn't going to happen. You can't shoot without an actor. So if you don't have an actor there, then you don't need, then nothing a wardrober is going to do matters. Nothing a hair and makeup person is going to do is going to matter. Nothing, what are you going to light? There's nothing to light, right? And then the grips, right? Like, where are they going to grip stuff to, right? It just doesn't, there's nothing there, right? And so this is really fascinating, right? Like, to the point where you land and you realize, okay, let's explore this. What are we really looking at? So a grip should not be less important than an actor, right? But the reality is, if the grips went on strike, Hollywood's not going to. The writers went on strike, and Hollywood barely budged. They were like, "Oh, it's a little bit. We didn't see you in the coffee room, but workday's going." Right? Like, it really didn't. It didn't matter, right? It didn't really matter to Hollywood overall. Or like, we can definitely continue forward without you. But with the actors, that's it, right? Literally Hollywood, and the moment the actors struck, the term Hollywood shutdown started to be heard, because it was legitimately shut down. And so you reach a point where you're like, you don't want to use the terms, and this is another reason why I don't want to use the term player character and non-player character. I want to use the term players. I want to use the term characters and entities, right? Because here you have characters and you have entities, right? You have catalysts. The actors are the heart of what's happening, right? And without them, all these other roles, they were never fired, right? But they were made irrelevant immediately, right? Or actually, not even irrelevant, but unnecessary. Like, there was no need for them, right? And it was not the other way around. Like, if you have poorly lit sets, you can fix it in post, right? Like, it is, it's a powerful thing, right? And so I think, we have this situation where we really realize, oh my gosh, celebrities, actors are the heart of Hollywood. And the moment they struck, the entire situation changed, right? Like, nobody was like, oh my gosh, the writers are on strike. What are we going to do? Everybody was like, were we getting good scripts anyway? Like, it was like, and they were like, we really hit a point where we were like, is this really a problem? Whereas the moment the actors were gone, everybody was like, there was a deep intake of breath, right? Because once you realize how critical they are, that they are the catalyst. Without them, nothing changes, right? Without them, there really is no momentum, right? And so the reality is, we should be very careful. We don't ever want to label anyone as unnecessary or irrelevant or not important, right? But at the same time, we definitely want to be striving in life to be in that character position, right? Not an entity position. We're we want to be a catalyst. We want to be in a position where it matters. And in order to do that, we need to bring a distinct skill set. We need to be unique. We need to be exciting, right? And so Gary set Dungeons and Dragons into place in this particular structure, and he's like, character, entity, player character, non-player character, right? Which side? And I don't think he was, and I think it was a brilliant structure, right? And I'm not positive that Gary was trying to say, I think he built a structure that when someone sits down to the Dungeons and Dragons table and sees, okay, I have a name, I have a species, I have a class, right? This entire world hinges on my actions, my decisions, right? But that non-player character over there, they don't even have a name. They don't have lines, right? They're going to fall, they may fall to my sword because a fight broke out, right? They may get killed in a rock, in a rock slide, right? They may simply deliver the buns to the bread shop, right? But the reality is, this world doesn't hinge on them, right? And so I think the moment you sit down at a Dungeons and Dragons table, there's this question of, what can I do to be in the player character slot and not the non-player character slot? What can I recognize that I am trying to build a life that everything around it is going to hinge off of my decisions, my actions, right? And it tells everybody who sits down at the Dungeons and Dragons table, you've got to do more, you've got to be more. And so what does that mean? You've got to take risks. You got to fight against evil. You have to be willing to jump into the fray, right? You have to accept quests, right? You are going to seek treasure, right? You're going to be a hero. Like, literally, folk hero is a background in Dungeons and Dragons, saying we are, and hero has been a title that is strived for in every single Dungeons and Dragons campaign since the dawn of time, right? Like, and unless you are literally inverting what is there for Dungeons and Dragons. So, really, really fascinating. I think this is a huge historical moment. And I also want to say, history, these huge moments in history absolutely impact us at the Dungeons and Dragons table. And I think every dungeon master needs to look right now and say, what's happening, right? What are going to be the needs of my table? Right now, I'll tell you right now, like, your table has never been in more dire need of narrative than right now. Like, never before have we really seen a situation where Hollywood's like, no fresh news stories for anyone, right? I have not seen this in my entire lifetime. There may have been a time before my lifetime, but in my entire lifetime, I have absolutely never seen anything that would, I've never seen anything like this. So it truly is astounding. So, watch carefully. Look at the structure of Dungeons & Dragons and what are the lessons that are available for you to learn. What is the wisdom that is available for you to take away? And I think the structure of Dungeons & Dragons was very carefully crafted, right, to allow us to say, okay, I want to be in that character position. Every single word of that is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion when you get into the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing and have a wonderful millennium.